Okay, we're good.
We're good. Welcome to Brother Owl's Garden. I'm Brian, and I'm honored to have you here today. I honor your presence. And I also am honoring the presence of Deng Ming-Dao, who is with us again today for the second time, which is a great honor in itself. Coming from San Francisco, Deng Ming-Dao, welcome.
That's right. Thank you. The honor is mine. It's a pleasure to be with you again.
Well, I just love you to the ends of the earth. I resonate
So
with you
kind.
so much. I call you brother sincerely from my heart. I just really adore and revere who you are. And thank you so much
You're
for
very
coming back
welcome.
to share on Brother Owl's Garden. It's very meaningful and valuable. Thank you.
That's great.
Today, what we would like to discuss, and I just turn the platform right over to you, Ming-Dao. Um, Something to the effect of a universal spirituality and how humanity is struggling right now by being a little bit out of harmony with that, and how can we get to that point. And I just turn it right over to you, Mingdao.
Well, thank you. I've been studying for almost 50 years now. That's kind of depressing in one way. And I've learned a lot of different things. And of course, they usually are taught to me in very elaborate terms and esoteric terms and so on. And like all religious traditions, there's a bit of conflict. We're this way, other people aren't that way. And we have to be this way, even if the rest of the world isn't that way. And I've been trying to think as time goes by, what would a spirituality be if it were universal? Are there spiritual values that everybody can agree upon? And as time goes by, I get less elaborate and more simple in my outlook because it just makes plain sense. All the robes, the glitter, the fancy terms, the strange ideas, and so on, that's fine. But you don't need to go that way in order to understand what the Taoists are saying. The first value I'd like to share with you is life. Everybody agrees that life is precious. What happens when in every TV show someone gets threatened because they might die or the whole world might be destroyed and so on? They do that because everyone understands that that's a bad thing. If they all understand it's a bad thing, what's the good thing? To live. Everyone wants to live. Even if they're very old and dying, they still want to live. Why is the situation in Ukraine right now so terrible when they kill people? That's bad. But when they kill children and bomb maternity hospitals, that's even more horrific. Why? Because it goes against life. What does Putin threaten us all with? The lack of life, because he knows that that's a value everybody shares. If life is the main value, can we find confirmation of that in the world around us? It's springtime now as we're talking, at least in my time. Oh, yeah, you're still in the northern hemisphere, right? Sorry, geography is
Yeah,
not my
not
main thing.
in Thailand. It is the overwhelmingly hot slash smoky season in the north right now.
But life comes back after winter,
Always.
right? What do we celebrate every dawn that the sun comes up? Why do the birds sing? Because it's another new day. So everywhere we look in nature, life is the primary value. If life is the primary value, what about death? Because everybody hates death, and I'm no exception. But is death truly the opposite of life? And I would question that. Because if you look at nature, life, the life force is overwhelming. There's not a single empty lot that isn't overgrown with weeds. Right? The water comes back, the winds come back, the sunlight comes back, everything comes back, and it's bursting with life. We call it pests. We call them weeds. We call this and that and so on until, uh-oh, we discover, well, actually, this is necessary to our life, right? One of the questions going on right now is the decline in the insect population. We thought that, well, they're just bugs. But it turns out that our very ecosystem is dependent on insects. Life. So there's no life that we can take for granted, and life keeps coming back. So when people die, yes, they die, but look at the world population. It keeps growing. Life is increasing. If death was literally the opposite of life, wouldn't we be at stasis? Wouldn't there be an equal number of deaths to life? But there aren't. And so life is the overwhelming value, and we should align ourselves with that and subscribe to it. I don't think that's hard. Old people want to have grandchildren. Everyone, loses it over a baby. People have pets. People have gardens, little pots of plants and so on. Instinctively, we all want to nurture life. But what if we accept that and say that that is the spiritual value? What do they say in Christianity? Oh, everlasting life. What do they say in Taoism? Immortality. They want life. So, if life is the universal value, that's something we can all agree upon. Now, the next question is this world good? I think so often we've been taught that the world is neutral, a wilderness for us to impose our will upon, right? The explorers just go out and say, well, no one lives there. Well, of course, someone lived everywhere. Our history is not a good guide. I mean, I don't mean the literal history, I mean the way it's written is not a good guide because it's filled with the attitudes of the people writing it. And they have a subconscious reason to pump themselves up. But if you look at the history of the world, there's been somebody, some animal, something there wherever anyone went. So this world provides for us. Can we look at that question? If you had no store, no food, nothing, where would you get your food? Well, you'd have to get it from the ground, just like primitive people did. Where do you get your air? Well, it's all around us. You don't have to go buy it. You breathe. And in fact, what do we do as soon as a baby's born? Is the baby breathing? And what do we look solemnly at as someone's dying? Have they taken their last breath yet? Air is free. Where do you get your water? You have to get it out of a well, a stream, a spring, and so on. The fact that we now have bottled water and municipal waterworks and so on is not relevant. Ultimately, they all have to get it from the earth, don't they? They're just getting it so they can sell it to us. That doesn't mean they make the water. You have to get the water. Gravity, we take that for granted. But people who are in weightless environments, like in space, they quickly decondition. Oh, so it turns out that gravity is important to our functioning as people too. Everything we get is from heaven and earth. And if I threw someone naked into a box, they'd starve to death or suffocate because they cannot make their own air, they cannot make their own food, they can do nothing. Everything we get is borrowed from the earth. Yes? So, that's the reason why I say this is a good world, not a neutral world, not a bad world, a good world, because everything is given to us in ample proportion. So ample that we have messed things up with our greed, and still most people are able to eat and survive. That's how rich this world is. It doesn't take a God to come down and give it to us, right? There's no one saying, here, sign up here before you get something to eat. Don't pick the fruit off the tree until you sign up for my religion. And so, no, it's there for anybody. So life is all around us. We live in a world that's good and generous. Can that be extended to say that the ultimate value is love? We get love from this world, and we love the world in return. Why are people in Ukraine fighting? They're fighting for their homeland, their families, their children. They don't want to be subjugated. They don't want to be um, brutalized by a madman. But it's because they love their homeland and they love their families. If the world provides for us generously, that's also love. Love is about connection. Love is about finding some other part and that part making us whole. What makes us whole as human beings is our environment and our relationship to others. When we find that and it's all around us, we benefit from it, we feel good about it, we want to respond in kind, and that's love. So here we are, a world in which life is supreme, a world in which we humbly are provided for in every way with great generosity. And the value that that indicates is love. And I would suggest to you that all the permutations of human love, from romantic love to compassion and so on, is an emulation of the generosity that this world extends to us. So we can talk more, but I just want to share those three ideas with you. And I think that's a plain spirituality that anybody can relate to, anyone can subscribe to, and anyone can benefit from. And they don't have to sign up for anything or call themselves anything. They just have to say, what's natural to me?
Well, that is a giant nebula of beauty that you've just shared with us, Ming-Dao. I'm sure that everyone can relate to it fully, as is my own nature whenever I hear someone luminous like yourself sharing on spiritual topics. I start relating. Oh, that relates to this thing that I read. That relates to this principle I've been mulling over. Um, you noted how life is sacred. I mean, that's so profoundly simple and fundamental. The sanctity of life. Life is sacred by its nature. What I would offer to that is that, as I often close my episodes with a little blessing, remember that we are each of us a sovereign individuation and emanation of the divinity from which we have arisen. And I think that in simplest terms, we just perpetually forget. We just forget constantly. And we fall into what I'll call disconnect. We we inadvertently or absent-mindedly, or because we get tired or forgetful, we unplug from the presence, the mindfulness, the awareness, the being of our true nature. And when we lose sight of that or fall out of harmony with that, we get all kinds of distortions. And I actually was thinking, it was either yesterday or the day before, I was actually thinking aloud, which I sometimes do. And I said, if we absolutely are, in fact, the divinity from which we've originated, what is this mess? What is this mess? What are we doing? How can, how is it possible that we are of and made up of the same substance as the divinity that we originated from, but we continue to live as if we're not, in total forgetfulness of that? And we don't have to look far. You've cited some examples now with the tragedies that are occurring in Ukraine, and there's many more, and there have been many others, and we always hope that there will be no more. But you know, this is the perverse distortion of our true nature.
Well, I have some different thoughts about that. I think, first of all, we need to have a sense of individuality. What we forget is that's provisional and not absolute. So, any of us who are parents of children want our children to have a healthy attitude about themselves. We want them to have a sense of themselves as individuals. We want them to be able to set boundaries. We want them to be happy. And so we do need them to have a sense of individuality. That's the first thing. All of us have to have a sense of individuality, or else we wouldn't feed ourselves, wipe ourselves when we go to the bathroom, none of that stuff. The problem is, as necessary as that sense of individuality is, we assume that it has an absolute and ultimate truth to it. And that's the mistake. We assume that what we feel and think and so on is the end of all we need to do in terms of assessing our role in this world. I'm in this world. It's me. And the world is out there. That's them. That's you.
Yeah.
I'm me. And so we never look past that. What do? At the best, at the urging of the sages, well, we try to develop empathy and compassion. But you see, it's easy to have the attitude that that's a concession. I'm trying to be holy. So, yes, I feel sorry for you, but it's still me feeling sorry for you. If we look deeper, nobody in this world is truly an individual. Everybody had a mother and father. Many of us have children. So we're only in the middle of a generation before us and a generation after us. Can you separate yourself from your parents? No. That's the explanation of why you're here. And if you're any kind of devoted parent at all, don't you think about your kid? Now, when your kid says, I'm afraid of you dying, what do you say? Don't you say, I'm always going to be with you? And that's not a lie, and that's not a story. It's not a fairy tale, because you literally are in them genetically. Their values, their thoughts, and so on happened when they were living with you. So how can you actually die in that sense? They're always going to remember you. There are people now who still remember their parents, right? Even though the parents are gone. And sadly, there are people who never got their parents' love and they're still craving it, even though their parents are gone. So what I'm trying to point out to you is that we are not truly isolated individuals, but we are part of a larger system of people at the very least. How many people truly live as hermits with no contact with anybody whatsoever? Not very many. Why is everyone going crazy with COVID? Well, I don't get to go out. I don't get to see my friends. There's talk about mental problems because people have been isolated for so long. It's a real thing. We are social creatures, but not as an evolutionary explanation, a habit, anything like that. It is natural. We are a social species. We are a social species not because we developed it, but because we are a group. So if we are a group, what does that mean? It's not just about the survival of us as a person, but it's about the survival of the group. Why will a parent readily sacrifice themselves for their child? There's no good reason. Why are people in Ukraine standing up? They might be dead in the next second. There's no good reason. But they do that because they know that they are part of a group. I think if any of us who have children were honest, at best they would yearn to die before their child. And I do know people, sadly, whose children have died before them, and it kills them. They're haunted the rest of their lives because it's not right according to how we wish that our life would go. So this goes with what I was saying earlier. Life is the ultimate value. Love is the ultimate value. Heaven and earth provide for everything, and we are both individuals and members of a group. That's why we contribute to the group. Not just because it's a nice thing to do, but because it's instinctive and natural for us to do that. If that's true, then there's meaning to my life as an individual, even if I die. If I've contributed to my group, have I made the lives of my family, my neighborhood, my community, my nation, have I made them better? That's why somebody who starts a war or a criminal who murders people and so on, that's why they're so damned. Because the outcome of their misdeeds echoes for generations. Conversely, if you do good, that also lasts for generations. So what would you rather do? Would you rather help people and make life possible? Or would you rather be greedy and make death the rule for everybody who follows in your wake? I think it's pretty obvious. So, and that's why we have to oppose people who are evil, because they are against life. And we have to stop anything that would interfere with the natural process of life. People say, oh, ego is the problem, selfishness is the problem, greed is the problem, so blah, 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 blah. It's just that need to distinguish and understand that we need to be both individuals and conscientious members of our group. Then everything works fine.
Ming-Dao, so many things pop into my head as I receive what you're offering. I'd love to be able to just insert my thought as a text
Please, well,
crawler
we're
on
talking. We're
but I
talking.
mean, as you're offering, if I could put it in a text crawler like you see
A
on those
crawl.
channels.
Oh, you have to edit the video.
Yeah, I'm so unskilled at all that. My videos are very, very basic, and if I have to do any serious editing, it isn't going to be done by me. I'll mess it up. But I'm trying to remember the quote from the movie with the Spartans, where what you do echoes into eternity.
Yes.
What you do echoes into eternity, and yes, what you do matters. James Allen quote: "Act as if what you do makes a difference." It does,
It does.
and again, there's a level of disconnect woven throughout all of this in the background when you forget and lose connectivity to your own sanctity and the importance of what you are emanating out into the world. In other words, even just by your frequency. As if you're having a very low frequency associated with the emotions of shame, guilt, misery, hatred, things like that, you are resonating that out onto everyone around you. Fortunately, and this will help affirm your what you posited, that this earth is not neutral and inert, but is actually good. It tends and trends toward good in its own nature. As you personally elevate your own frequency by manner of shedding things that do not serve you and are negative or toxic, or ultimately are not you, as you shed those things, your frequency naturally, in a buoyant way, raises and lifts up. And the higher your personal frequency goes, you reach exponentially more people. That is to say that the really awful low vibrations, which do affect people, thankfully do not reach as many people as the very, very, very high, pure, you know, and more divine in nature frequencies. And I've always thought this. It may be that small handful of saintly people who are living on the periphery or in the shadows of a community that are holding it together, because everyone is being nourished energetically by those luminous souls and their ever ascending frequency. Because, as you mentioned, yeah, we are individuals, or as I said before, individuations, of a far greater whole. Uh, Ultimately, although I do not claim to be able to really grasp this, at least intellectually, ultimately, there are no others. I remember the adage about the monk that went to his master and said, "Oh, I'm being harassed and bothered by these other people, and I don't know. I just don't know what's the proper way to deal with them. How do I deal with these other people?" And the master said, "There are no others." So all of these people that we are interacting with, in a way, are another facet of us, and we them. And there's that connectivity again. And if we disconnect from that, then we can believe that if I launch that missile at you and kill you, I win, you lose, you're dead. Because there's that, it's not just a veil at that level, it's a steel wall.
Well, it's
You-
called ignorance.
yeah, that ignorance and unawareness is what allows that kind of perception and its relevant fruits to perpetuate. But we are all absolutely connected. And again, I'm not claiming that I really grok this, as they say, but ultimately there are no others, or at least we should live as such.
Well, if I can just back up to the beginning of your remarks, act as if you make a difference. But can we look at that directly? Everything we do makes a difference. And what is difference? Difference is change. If I have this pen and I go like, it's different, it's in a different place. So one of the follies that we have is that we think that there are important and unimportant acts. But what if there are only acts? And everything we do changes something. You pick up the coffee cup and you put it back in a different place. You've changed it. So instead of saying, oh, don't pay attention to that stuff that I did, only pay attention to this good stuff I did and put me up for a prize, but don't pay attention to that. No, everything you do makes a difference. How can you categorize what's good and bad? How can you predict which one of your acts is going to be great and like, oh, not important? You don't get to say that. You just keep acting every day. In the same way, I say to parents, you are always teaching. You cannot say, oh, only pay attention to the important lessons I'm imparting to you.
Mhm.
And in the meantime, you're just slobbing it up in front of the television.
Yeah,
The kid's
yeah,
looking at that too,
yeah,
right? When you lose it, you start screaming. Kid picks that up. You can't say, "Oh, don't listen to what I said there," but do listen to this. No,
yeah,
everything you do matters.
yeah,
If everything you do causes change and difference, then it's a big call to be mindful because you cannot be sloppy. Anything you do will matter. So, what we want to do then is to accumulate and have a trajectory to our actions. We don't want to just go, I just will do whatever. Yeah, you can kind of get by doing that. But what would happen if you tried to build the events that you put together so that it makes a greater impact on the people around you?
mhm,
The idea that there are no others is a metaphor for the fact that we are all one. So when somebody destroys a country, which is a really egregious act, it is affecting everybody in the world, isn't it? COVID affected everyone in the world without exception. I don't think there's anybody in the world who's like, oh, what are you talking about? I never heard of this. It's been 2 years as we're talking right now.
I've never seen any single thing in my lifetime affect more people more directly and also indirectly than
Right.
that incident.
So what does that mean? First of all, we started this conversation talking about individual individuals, sorry. The masses will always overcome the individuals. That's why people like Putin lie. That's why they divide people, because the only true threat to them is unity. Look at all the things that go on in our lives that are about divisiveness, deceit, trying to get us to value our own um, gratification over caring for
Yeah,
other people.
yeah,
Every marketing message is about, hey, you deserve it. It's going to make your life easier. It's more fun. You'll be prettier. You'll be sexier. You'll be happier. You'll be blah, 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 blah. You never get sold something like, say, buy this and you'll help somebody else,
yeah,
right? So there are no others if we understood that, but we're still aware that everything we do has an effect, then that changes how we behave. I bet you people behave differently inside their home than they do outside. And we normally are more careful with those people we care about in our homes than we might be for, quote, strangers. What if there are no strangers? So, in the tradition I come from, I mean, the culture I come from, my grandmother, for example, never closed the door to her apartment. Anybody could come in and have a meal because there were no others. So, think about that. If you have no others, then it's only you. And in, in addition to the obvious argument that everything we do should be in our own self interest, giving to others is also gratifying. I've gotten to the point now where it's like, am I going to buy one more thing? I have like everything I need. How many meals can I eat at one time? But when I see someone else eat, when I see someone else happy, when I show them something that they didn't know they could get, but now they can get it, or even in a conversation like this, where we hope that other people will hear these ideas and have a better life because of these thoughts, that's much more gratifying than having one more thing,
Yeah.
one more meal.
Well, you know, on that general topic of giving, what I've learned about giving is that we are not containers, we are conduits
Mm-hmm.
of grace, abundance, and wealth and blessings of all kinds. And the world, the way of the world, and that whole lower mindset that I'm addressing will instill in you and reinforce in you, you got to go out and get yours. You got to hustle, grab, get before somebody else does or instead of somebody else does. And then you've got to keep and hoard and amass stuff, power, objects, wealth, etc. Well, that's death. That's the absolute opposite of the nature of life. And the well, it only seems ironic if you've been living with some degree of ignorance about it, but until you awaken to it, you are. So that irony that I discovered is that the more you give, the more comes to you to get,
Thank you. Yes,
to
indeed.
give.
You can just make that the main topic and
Yeah,
chisel that in stone.
yeah,
And
that's it.
you've seen it, I've seen it. Uh, if you give love, you get 10 times the love back.
Yeah,
You give hate, you get 10 times the hate back.
yeah,
I mean, you mentioned the word exponential. It's not just the question of accumulating things, it's the nature of what you put out determines the nature of what comes back to you.
that's it.
That's why we have to persevere, and that's why we have to continue on, and that's why we have to keep our hearts pure. So, if we put that out, that's the most important thing we can do. If we can give, that's more important than getting. Now, people would say, well, why are there still problems in the world if you guys are so smart? Because people in every generation keep buying this idea that they are lone individuals, that only their ambition matters. What do they study in school? Oh, the quote, conquerors,
Yeah,
Alexander the Great, Napoleon, and so on. Well, then it's pretty easy to think, well, hey, every teacher likes Alexander the Great. You know, people said that the Romans were great, and so unfortunately there was a decline of the Roman Empire, but that was because of the barbarians and so on and so forth. But hey, these were great people, and you go to the museum, you see these marble statues. So it's easy to think, well, then I'm going to be that way. We have people now who are more wealthy than anybody in history has ever been. I mean, $1 billion is unimaginable, uncountable, let alone $100 billion. And what have they done with their lives? Space shots? Servants? New wife? And yeah, they're going to die. And I'm sure I've seen great mausoleums of kings and emperors, richer than any of these people will ever be, fancier than anything they'll ever build, and they're still dead. And you take any of them, let's say Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, surrounded by the terracotta warriors. Did he do good? He left a legacy that was violent and horrible, but did he leave a kind of legacy that a holy person would leave? That's all about goodness and love and understanding. We should not be taken by gold and granite and jade. Those are things, just material stuff. Same thing you get out of the ground, anything else, right? Can't eat it, can't breathe it, can't hold it at night and have it keep you warm. Is that what we really need to go for? It's just such a shame that people need to have numbers, and then they think my number's got to be bigger than yours.
Yeah.
And we have that in every aspect of our society. Oh, go see this actress because she makes $30 million a film. So then that makes her better than someone who makes only $100,000 per film. Does it? Buy this book, it sold 1 million copies. Does that make it better? But that's what we think. My house is more expensive than yours. My car is more expensive than yours. I have more money in the bank than you do. I've gotten married. I've had more lovers than you have. So I'm better than you.
Mhm.
You see, more, 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 more. That's all we think about, and that's what our society perpetuates. We need to get away from the idea of more. And if you go back to what I said about heaven and earth, there's always enough for you to eat and drink for the rest of your life. What more do you need? There's places to go. None of us can really see every square inch of this earth in our lifetime. And so, how many people do you need to have in love with you? You can help hundreds, thousands, maybe millions, but not as lovers, but by being kind and generous and helpful. Isn't that better? So, but this lesson is not new. What you and I are saying is not new. What you and I are saying is what the sages have taught us for thousands of years. And we're just updating the language
Yeah,
and adapting it to our situation.
exactly.
And every generation, people make the same mistakes. And they have to learn. The tragic ones never learn and just die. But still, the world goes on. We're still trying to get it right. And life still comes back.
I often reflect, take a few steps back and look at life, and I say, gosh, so much of it is tragic theater. These
Mm-hmm.
delusions of grandeur that we grasp onto them so viciously. And look at how social media in particular has just rotted the souls of so many, especially younger people, and seems to be targeting or more effective even more than the average with younger women, younger girls. And this whole craving for, I need to have more likes, and I need to get more and more hits of digital dopamine, whatever. And eventually you can watch it devolve as they compromise further and further their dignity and sell out fragments of their souls, one post at a time, just to get approval and attention. And I mean, that is an energy feed. They're feeding on the energy of their followers. But it's such pathos to see how social media in that negative way, it's not all negative, but in that negative way has affected us. And as you alluded to before, that whole drive for more, newer, better, I've always got to be on top. The new iPhone 79, whatever. I just have to have newer, better, more than you guys. And it's almost as if we are projecting onto possessions our own self-worth. We're looking outside of ourself for validation and our own self-worth, rather than looking within, which when you do turn within, you realize, as you mentioned, I don't need that much. I don't need a new, bigger, better, most expensive anything. I just need the tools that I need to engage in the experiences that I seek for the sake of enhancing and uplifting my being. Those things you do need. I mean, we do need some things, but can't remember the name of the Muslim sheikh. You would think it would be a Buddhist luminary, but it was actually a Muslim sheikh who said the best definition I've ever heard. I wish I could remember his name offhand, of detachment or non-attachment, as we say. And he said, detachment is not having nothing. Detachment is nothing having you.
Hmm, that's a good one. Yes, indeed.
So yeah, if there are, as we said, billionaires, multi-billionaires, that in itself is just a statement. What are you doing with your enormous wealth? If you're doing profound good for others with it, more power to you. God bless you. Keep doing it. But if you're hoarding it in fear and lack and selfishness, then no, no. So it's more not so much what you've got, but what are you doing with what you've been given? And I'll finish that point with sort of a playful quote that came to me, oh, about 2 years ago, and I'll make an episode about it at some point. And it was the realization of the fact that I have been given the gift of giving the gifts I've been given. I've been given the
Hmm.
gift of giving the gifts I've been given. And when you live from that consciousness that you've been given the gift of giving the gifts that you've been given, you just become this divine conduit, which you already are. But you realize that you become this divine conduit that you actually already are.
Right. I think I'm having a little connectivity problems, but we'll keep talking and see if it works
That
itself out.
that's definitely on my
Speaking of
end. That's
giving,
that's the Ti-Fi.
right.
In case I got cut off there, I was just saying that when you begin to live from the realization that you've been given the gift of giving the gifts you've been given, you then step into your role as a divine conduit, and all things are presented to you, and you present them out. And then you are totally in harmony with heaven. You're engaged with heaven.
And in actuality, that's all anybody is. We're all in constant exchange with our environment. If you inhale, you have to exhale. If you have to eat, you have to eliminate that, right? It's always this kind of give and take. The cliche is you can't take it with you. Well, if that's true, which of course it is, then nothing you possess is ever permanently yours. It's only in your custody for a while.
Exactly.
And instead of saying that that's a bad thing, I think that's a source of greater appreciation because we are enriched by the handiwork of so many people. Just as none of us are individuals, there are no others, and so on, we benefit from the fact that there are so many gifts given to us. Just anything, a teacup, a table. Think about how much effort it took for that to come into your house. You didn't have to make it yourself, but someone had to make it. The materials had to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Even something that's quote synthetic had to come from the ground in one form or the other.
Yeah.
So everything is transformation. Everything is exchange. And instead of gumming up the works by saying, hey, oh wow, look, I'll just keep all these dollars coming in, then we really should keep exchanging, right? And that's why we, you and I, have to keep sharing this knowledge. We didn't make it up. Someone took the time to give it to us. We didn't steal it. Someone gave it to us. And so we ought not to hoard it either. Oh, I'm happy. I don't care if anyone else is happy.
Mm.
No, you want to give the same gift to other people because it's not yours to keep. Nothing is yours to keep. Life again. If you withhold, you put a gate down, you stop the waters, you dam the rivers, you're stopping life. So let us not stop life, but let us support it and let us pass on the gifts that we've been given.
After all, as you mentioned, things are just in our care. We we have custodianship over them. We have, you might say, we have rights to them for a while until we transfer it to somebody else, either by giving it or when we leave this body, they're all going to be dispersed to others anyway. And another thing you made me think of is, you talked about how everything has to come from somewhere. I believe that we are co-creators in this creation that we live in, but not in the sense that we actually make things. What I've observed is that all we actually do is rearrange things. We
I
just
mean, that's fine.
rearrange things.
Right, right. I think if we can look at creativity for a moment, it is also akin to life. Life creates. So, arguably, when we create, yes, you could say we're only rearranging things in a way that we're given the opportunity to do. We can say a man and a woman make a child, but they're only dealing with natural processes. And what they do is only the fulfillment of a biology that is, in a sense, independent of them. They
Yeah,
can't make an egg, they can't make a sperm, they can't make a baby
yeah,
except by participating in this natural process.
yeah. I would say that in such a case as that, these a, a new life is made through them. In other words, um, tip of the hat to Alan Watts. He would say, "This is all lifing.
Mm-hmm,
Life
mm-hmm.
is lifing. We're almost fractal emanations of the same
Not
phenomenon
almost,
of
right,
life."
right. And do you see, only life can make life.
Right.
Dead stuff can't make life except for the earth transforming it. But it's only earth that makes life out of the dead things, right? What happens when someone dies? Bury them. And you can't put those ashes back together or those pieces back together even 1 second after someone's dead and their whole body is there. You can't call them back.
Mhm.
They have to be transformed again. Only life makes life. And so we, in our humility, can try to be the facilitators of that, the stewards of that, but we can't claim to be the creators in the way that heaven and earth create.
Right. We are participants. We are vital participants and components of what's being created. I mean, if I could just mention, there was a phase of my life recently, over the past 3 years, where this indomitable drive to build stone shrines, pyramids, stupas, chedis, this it just flooded through me, and I built a total of 9 of them, of which I kept 6 there. And this was a place nearby where I'm living now, here in Thailand. And I built essentially the largest one was a 3-sided stone pyramid. I may do an episode about it one time, but people would come by and visit and things, and they say, well, what are you doing? What are you making? And I'd say, well, first of all, I'm not even entirely sure. All I know is that this is flowing through me like a torrent, and it needs to express through me and be born through me. And all I know is what I can see over the horizon that I need to do next. And it took me about 2 years, and I didn't know what these things were going to end up being. And towards the end, I was much clearer in my understanding that these things had been manifested through me, not by me. And the reasons became clearer to me in hindsight as well. They had to do with drawing in and focusing the spiritual energy of the place, which is at the base of a very sacred mountain here, which I gradually came to understand as it unfolded to me. But after having done all that tremendous stonework, moving boulders that were literally the size of washing machines at some point, and televisions, just to give a reference, huge. And people would say, "How'd you do it?" And I said, "Well, the truth is, technically, I didn't. Because when I realized that I had to move a stone that was beyond my personal physical body's ability, I would make a moment's prayer and ask for spiritual help. And I could feel it happen, a boost of 30% more strength, for example. And I knew that it was being born through me by a force greater than me. And at the end of the end of the end of all that process that I had no choice but to let flow through me as if I were selected for it, I came to realize, now you have done enough of exerting and investing your energy into the world and material things. That's done. Now don't do that anymore. Invest all of your sacred energy into things that will last forever, that will resonate into eternity. And that is spiritual, not material. And so this channel, Brother Owl's Garden, is my new temple. This
Yes.
platform is my temple. I started off building the ones made of stone, and they're beautiful and magnificent, but that's done. Next level. Now build in the spiritual realm. And so here's my channel, and that's why it's such a great honor to invite and have you sharing on it, Ming-Dao.
Well, I'm happy to be here. That's why we have to obey that voice. We don't know why we do things sometimes,
Yeah,
but there is a double check because the voice always asks you to do something good and constructive. The voice doesn't say go stab somebody, right? Or go drink yourself to death every night. It'll be fun. But it might be mysterious. It might seem quixotic. But we have to obey those signs, those omens, those voices. Why? Because when the time comes and those things are needed, it's too late to build them. So there are people that I've taught. I don't know why I'm supposed to teach them, but I don't hold back. And then it's turned out over time that they've faced great travails, great crises of health and mental challenges and so on. And they only got through them because they had a practice. If then they say, call me up and say, I need to start practicing now, it's too late.
yeah,
And they say, well, people will say, well, if they had a practice, why did they still face challenges? Because everybody does. The point to practice is not because it prevents all problems, but because it helps you deal with them when they come up.
yeah,
So if the beyond calls you to do this, you have to obey. And we don't know why. We don't need to know why. We
exactly.
just need to know that it feels honest and true and it fulfills us and it's not hurting anybody. And then when time passes, you will see the reason for it. And at that point, it is it's irresistible. It cannot be undone. Yeah, you can tear down the stupas, but even that would take time. You can put these videos out and people will say, well, how many supporters you have. That's not the point. 5 years now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, someone will say, well, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. And, I just got a message from somebody who found one of my books, and they lived in a very remote part of Canada. And they found it as a teenager, and it's guided her all this time. Well, that's not what I quote tried to engineer. And, is it going to put money in my pocket? No, it's been like 30 years or whatever, right? But it helps somebody. And that person in turn is going to help other people.
Yep.
And that feels a hell of a lot better than shooting someone.
Yeah. You know, we just don't know how much our actions impact others as they ripple outwards. And that's what we alluded to before with, act as if what you do makes a difference. What I meant by that is that it matters. Of course, I was quoting James
Everything.
Allen's quote. It
Right.
matters. And something that you did 3 decades ago is currently impacting a beautiful soul in remote Canada somewhere, to the point
Mhm.
that it has guided her through her life. You couldn't have imagined that when you wrote that. And the the best, that's an example of what can be done. But when we simply work on ourselves, and I don't even want to say work, but when we purify and release and heal and liberate ourselves, the frequency just naturally rises back up to its natural state and resonates out like a beacon, like a lighthouse to the world. Now, who wants to ignore the lighthouse and run up on the rocky reef? Up to you. You don't control anybody's will. But the lighthouse stands as a beacon and shines its light for all who will receive it.
Right.
And, you know, as you mentioned, oh, well, how many subscribers, whatever. Ultimately, I don't care. But what I can tell you is that already, if you read through the comments in some of the videos, already the impact on some of the individuals who have viewed the videos has been, it's already completely worth it for me, even if it were one or two. But it's a handful of profoundly impacted, positive acknowledgments and affirmations. And I just say, wow, wow, that is so great. And I wonder how many didn't necessarily chime in and say anything, but that it is in some
Sure.
way helping them too. And it's in no way, shape, or form to suggest that I'm some kind of, luminous person or something. I'm doing the best I can. And even since I've started this channel, my own awareness and sense of presence in life is is always evolving.
Of course, because
Always.
everything you do makes a difference. And if everything you do makes a difference, everything is change. And if there's change, there has to be evolution, right?
Yeah. We're all growing together, you
Yes.
know.
And the more you put those voices out there, the more kindred people will hear it, right? And so that's the other side we didn't mention about people feeling like they're individuals. People feel lonely. And what is lonely but not being connected to others?
And self.
Yes. And so if you're alone and you hear a reassuring voice, isn't that welcome? And so spiritually, there are many people out there who are alone and they need to hear a friendly voice encouraging them. And if you can even just do that, that's already profound and needed, so needed in this world.
Absolutely. And so we offer what we can of what we have where we are, because we've been gifted the gift of gifting the
Right.
gifts we've been gifted. That's why
Yes.
they're given to us, to give them.
To give to others. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to hoard and keep and hide, to give, to share. All of
Right.
these truths that we're touching on, they do not belong to us. and they are eternally older than our awareness of them. And they have been expressed myriad ways in different cultures, traditions, religions, and epochs throughout history. And these conversations, such as you and I are having now, are gentle and meaningful reminders to us all, because we do fall into disconnect and forgetfulness, and especially in trying, challenging times, as I would
And
describe.
these have to be among the most challenging times in
Yeah,
recent memory,
yeah.
certainly. Yeah.
So more than we probably can ever recall in our lives is this kind of a message needed and helpful. So to everyone that comes here and receives this this beautiful conversation that we've had today, drink it in. You may not realize immediately the effect it will have on you over time as these realizations unfold and manifest and allow you to release the things that were contrary to them, that are not ultimately you, that were not serving you. Let them go, release them, and be free of them, and you'll just naturally lift up. It's almost like the metaphor of the muddy pond. It when it abides in stillness, it cleans itself.
Yes.
It settles of its own accord.
And then there's joining. The pond pools, and people who hear us hope that they join with others, join with us, and improve the world for everybody.
Yeah, because remember, if the pond is completely cut off and isolated, it becomes a rancid swamp of contaminated, dirty water.
Mhm.
But it flows.
Yes.
It's got a spring feeding it. It's got a rivulet leading
Coming
out
out
of
of
it,
it. Yep.
because we're all interconnected conduits. Give your water, be the water. I think we'll finish it right there. So
Thank you
wonderful
so much.
viewers, thank you so much to Deng Ming-Dao. I highly recommend that you check out all that he has offered of his sacred self in book form. My personal favorite vendor is bookdepository.com, because they will ship any order of any size, even one book, free globally. So
Wow.
I recommend them, but you get it wherever you want. But do check out Deng Ming Dao's many books. Is it, how many titles is it now? Is it?
I think it's close to 12, something like that. Depends
Yeah,
how you
yeah,
know. But
yeah.
yeah.
And I've got in 2 locations now. I've got 10 or so of them, 9 or 10 of them so far. And what a platform you have. And can you even imagine how many souls you're impacting and helping, and your sacred offering, Ming-Dao, how it resonates out into so many people. And here is another infusion of that today in our conversation.
Well,
So,
you and I both. We're just trying
well,
to help other people.
it's all we can do.
Yeah.
And so from the fullness of my heart and all my being, I thank you, Ming-Dao,
Thank you.
for
You're welcome.
sharing and visiting again. You're always completely welcome here. And I honor you and I cherish very much who you are. Thank you.
So much.
And may we all remember and live that we are sovereign, individuated emanations of the divinity from which we have arisen. Remember to give of yourself the gifts that you have been given. It's why you've been given them. Thank you, everyone.